Hello and welcome back to Boxing Social in association with Betfred. My name is Eamon Khan, joined on a Sunday with the one and only, the multi-talented man in boxing, the one and only Dave Colwell, today to grab his reaction to the latest in the boxing world. First off, Dave, how's life treating you?
Very good, thanks. Very good. Sun's shining. Sunday afternoon, just got back from football. Good fight last night that I enjoyed. It's been a good weekend so far.
Let's jump straight into that action then, picking off from last night's stunning victory, Dimitri Bivol. Let's rewind slightly quickly, Dave. How did you see the fight coming in? Because normally when fights like this happen, we kind of do a bit of revision in terms of how we feel about the two fighters. But what was your thinking going into the fight, and how would you think it would have played out?
Going into it, myself and the lads in the gym, all the fighters, we all said the same thing. Everybody's sleeping on Bivol. I couldn't believe that when this fight was announced, that people were still slagging off Canelo and saying he's cherry picking, is this. Listen, going into the fight, you look at Bivol and Beterbiev and you think one of those two is number one, the other is number two. We don't quite know which one is number one yet. So Bivol's top two in the division. So for a man like Canelo, his size, the weight divisions he's gone through, what he's done at super middleweights, then go up to light heavyweight. And yes, he had the faded version, but Kovalev's still a good fighter, dangerous fighter, but very, very faded. So he's dipped his toes in there. But the next fight he goes back up there is to fight one of the two best, and not the one that's at the end of his career, not the one that's got wear and tear and showing vulnerabilities. So I couldn't understand the criticism of the fight initially. As we've talked, in the gym about the actual fight outcome, we all felt that Bivol has the tools to win the fight. The only thing that I had as a question mark was, what if Canelo gets in on the inside? Because Bivol, he hasn't got any sort of inside game. So you think, could Canelo, if he gets there, start putting on him and take him, work him over? Again, looking at Canelo's last few fights, he's going very, very single power based. With his punching, loading up on big booming shots. When you keep up going through the weight division, sooner or later those shots don't have quite the same effect as they do on the weight division below. And Bivol's defense, Bivol's boxing ability, and the ability to not really feel any of the punches contributed to a fantastic win from Dimitri Bivol.
Talk me through that fight then, Dave, and how you kind of broke it down as you were watching it. There was a lot of talk and reaction about maybe Canelo not having much of a plan B. It did look like he tried to mix it up in there, but how did you feel the fight was unfolding before your eyes as you watched it?
I thought Bivol controlled everything, absolutely everything. Myself and Lerone were on messages while watching the fight, and we both said the same thing. We felt beforehand that it couldn't. You see sometimes Bivol has a lot of movement on his legs. Whereas last night he stepped, backed up, hands nice and high, kept the distance, kept the range, but didn't put any unnecessary work on his legs that he didn't need to, where maybe down the stretch he may tire. But what Bivol was doing was frustrating, was keeping the range, was nullifying Canelo's work in the most simplest sort of fashion. And every round, I felt as though he kind of controlled. And we've seen, I listened to the commentary, and a couple of, when they're talking about Canelo, maybe he looks a little bit gassed. Canelo, if you look at Canelo's fights previously, unless my memory is playing tricks, I feel that he is a fighter that always does have a little bit of a lull in those mid sort of rounds, late rounds. So it was no surprise that when he's loading up and he's carrying the extra weight, and you're loading up and you have no success, not landing, and somebody's keeping you occupied as much as what Bivol was, that's going to tire you out. So when Canelo started looking tired towards the end, and then Bivol starts opening up with more combination punches, that wasn't really a surprise with how the fight would be panning on as it went along. Like I said, I thought Bivol controlled everything. Listen, those scorecards, I can't see that. I think, again, it's bullshit scoring. I'm a big fan of Canelo. but I'm a fan of Bivol. I like what he does as well. But I like what Canelo's achieved, what he's done, and people you get tweets where people are digging him out now because he's got beat. No, listen, he tested himself against arguably the best light heavyweight in the division. So you can't slag him off. He's come through the weight divisions. He's not a particularly tall man, and he's given up advantages as he's gone through, and he got beat. He got beat by a very, very good fighter, by an elite IQ and very, very smart, sound boxer.
In Bivol's win here, Dave, what do you attribute his win to more? The weight differential or the boxing IQ?
Let's remember, people seem to have forgotten this. Bivol, about a year ago, the rumors he was talking about, he would go down to super middleweight.
Mm.
I don't know if it was in the pandemic or whatever. There was talk about him possibly going down to super middleweight for a fight against Canelo.
Yeah.
But and we've always looked at Bivol. He's not the biggest of light heavyweights. Yes, he's taller than Canelo or whatever, but majority of fighters are. But if you stand him next to a Callum Smith, standing next to some of the other fighters in the division, he's not the biggest of guys at light heavyweight. So I think he's one of those that's in between the super middleweight and the light heavyweight division. Obviously, he's boxed all his career at light heavyweight, but don't do him a disservice by saying, "Oh, it's just because of their size." Or you've got to say no. It's because of his boxing IQ, his discipline, and his boxing ability. People have this thing in their head where they think that you have to be a one-punch knockout merchant to beat the top guys, beat the best guys. Well, no, you don't. You don't. If you're a good boxer and you hit hard enough to keep them off you, not just be able to walk straight through you, but if your feet and your distance control is that good that even when they do try and rush you and walk through you, you can keep your distance, keep the fight on your terms. You don't need to be a one-punch knockout merchant. And Bivol boxed very, very well. And you can't tell me that later on in the fight that his punches didn't have enough sting on Canelo to stop him from launching a plan B where he just he's trying to do something different, because he tried to lure him in. There was a point where Bivol, and this again goes back to Bivol's discipline, which is a massive contribution to his win. Because you imagine you're fighting an absolute superstar, and you're having it quite comfortable in there. Let's be honest, Bivol must have been where all of a sudden then Canelo starts backing off, and you feel as though you're controlling everything. Some fighters might get a little bit excited, where then they start chasing the dramatic stoppage. They start trying to, before the cups, they're going in and trying to take it out of the oven. And he didn't. Even when Canelo was playing possum, going on the ropes and trying to lure him in, you can see him trying to lure him in, but Bivol didn't fall for it. He kept it his range and discipline, boxing ability.
Mentioning quite a number of interesting things there. The one I want to pick out from the bunch is Bivol dropping down potentially to super middleweight to get that fight in the first instance. There is a rematch clause. Canelo does seem that he wants to take it in the heat of the aftermath of the fight, but that gives up the interesting question of maybe if the rematch could happen at super middleweight for the undisputed titles. Would you want to see that potentially, or a rematch in general?
No, because Bivol's not. He's a world champion at light heavyweight. That was for the world title at light heavyweight. So I don't. And again, Bivol's 18 months older when he said he would go down to super middleweight for Canelo, and he doesn't have to go down to super middleweight for Canelo. So why would he? So that's not going to happen. Yeah, the rematch is interesting. I'll watch the rematch, because you look at it. If you remember when AJ got beat by Ruiz, there's this when a fighter of that sort of standing, AJ, Canelo, huge superstars and icons in the sport, when they do get beat, all eyes are on them about a rematch. Obviously, look at AJ now, Usyk, but with the Canelo fight against Bivol, now the same sort of intrigue is, because in all intents and purposes, it was a one-side fight. Don't get it twisted with the judges' scorecards. That was a one-sided fight, and all right, there wasn't loads of drama, knockdowns, things like that. But there was one man that was clearly outboxing another, and to flip that round is going to take some serious work in that gym, and there's going to be a lot of adjustments having to be made. And we all like to see if these fighters can make these adjustments when they suffer a big loss. You know, you look at when Mayweather beat Canelo, and look at the way he improved after that loss. Phenomenal. But again, it's something that we've talked about in the gym amongst ourselves and at my gym with my fighters. I feel that Canelo, this version of Canelo for the last few fights, he's lost a lot, not lost, but he's stopped doing a lot of the things that you should do outside the power. You know, it's more based on looking for the big booming shots to crunch him and to take him out. More even, you know, slow footed, but more one-dimensional defensively. You know, and he has got great, when he uses it, he's got great trunk movement, head movement, but all that seems to have gone out of the window over the last few fights, where he's looking to wear you down, grind you down, and take you out. And I think that when you're stiff-backed and quite stationary target, for someone like Bivol, who's got beautifully crisp, clean punches, that makes his job a little bit easier, because Bivol's either landing or they're hitting his gloves, they're hitting something. And you can even, again, I'm watching it at 4:30 in the morning, whether my mind's playing tricks on me or not. He even looks tight around the shoulders compared to when he, you know, when you see him with his trunk movement against the Danny Jacobs, when you see him in the fights with Golovkin, it just seems so much more rigid and tight, where he's bracing himself to take the shots, to land shots off it, rather than slipping and being a little bit tricky and cute on the way in. So there are things that you know that Canelo can do better going forward, but maybe with all the talk and everybody fall in love with his power and everything, maybe that's how they're just looking at, and that's how he's kind of like slipped in, because it won't be the first time. How many fighters do you see when you see a lot with prospects, when they start banging a few kids out, they become reliant on the power and forget about the fundamentals of what made them so good in the first place. A lot of fighters do that. And just because you're elite level and because you're a superstar doesn't mean that you can't be susceptible to falling into those traps. And maybe that's the case. And maybe when you do have, I know Eddie's always said about just how confident he is, he truly believes he beats absolutely everybody. And then he's talked about fighting Usyk. I mean, forget about last night's result. As far as I'm concerned, no, because that Usyk would absolutely take you to bits. But that, because he's got that mentality and that aura about himself, where he believes he can do it and he wants to chase us. I love that because everyone's scared of losing, and everybody's fearful of failing when they set these targets. Canelo doesn't give a shit. He's like, all right, I've made my money. Now let's see what I can achieve. Let's see how good I am. And I love that sort of talk. But you can't forget the other things that go in boxing apart from power, because as you're going up through those divisions, it doesn't matter. You're gonna start running into these bigger guys that can take that power. I mean, I'm listening to the commentary. I'm listening to them talking. They seem shocked that Bivol was taking Canelo's punches.
Yeah.
You know, Bivol's a well-schooled amateur, fought some good names, big names, done a lot in the amateurs, and he's been boxing light heavyweight. He's been world champion with God knows long. How many light heavyweights and cruiserweights has he sparred, and people that are bigger, and where he's felt the power and things? You know, he's been in with Joe Smith, who can bang. You know, and so a fight that's taken them shots and he's never been down. I think he's been buzzed once. I think Joe Smith buzzed him in the 11th or something like that. But he's been in with big guys that can punch throughout his career. And they're talking like the surprise because a guy that's come up through the weight divisions isn't hurting him. You know, that's where people are buying into the power of Canelo a bit too much, you know. Yes, he punches very, very hard, but sooner or later, you're going to go into the divisions. Like I said, the punch power is going to be diluted. And if you've forgotten the boxing skills that made you great, or if you forget to implement them, then it's going to cause you problems. Speaking
of those boxing skills, I have a multi-part question for you. that's the second defeat Canelo has suffered in his career, first to Floyd Mayweather. Now, people, boxing fans will argue that'll be his third or fourth if you count Lara and Golovkin there too, maybe fifth if you say twice as well. How many, speaking of like blueprints of how to beat a fighter of the stature of Canelo, was that a blueprint there? And if it was, how many boxers can replicate that throughout the divisions that he would fight fighters in? And also, I'm going to throw in specifically, you have a fight in your stable at super middleweight. Yeah. Could he replicate that sort of blueprint too against someone like Canelo?
So Mayweather was intelligent, knew how to control his distance of the ring, had a fundamentally sound defense, and had hand speed. Great feet. Lara, great feet. Boxing ability, southpaw. Trout gave him problems. Golovkin, in a different way, that's a different. You can't compare to Lerone Richards. That's what I look at Lara and I look at Lerone, and you look at that sort of style. That's straight away the style is going to cause him problems. You know, before last night, people said, you know, we saw Matchroom and DAZN talking about Craig Richards. No disrespect to either of them. Neither of them have got a win as good as Lerone's over Gongora's. Neither of them. And then you're talking about John Ryder. He beat Danny Jacobs, but it's an old Danny Jacobs. So why can you mention those sort of fighters, but you can't mention Lerone's? Lerone's won British, Commonwealth, European. He's a top 10 ranked Finger Magazine fighter. So just have not mentioned him in that conversation. If you're going to throw names in, then I find, you know, Lerone not very happy about it himself. He's like, I'm here and I'll fight him. And it's not just about chasing a paycheck. You know, Lerone is, I'm telling you, skills for skills. He's a problem in that division. He is elite level when it comes to skills and boxing abilities. He's never shown any vulnerabilities. He is very, very good. People talk about, oh, he can't hit. He hits hard enough to stop you from walking through him. Gongora, if you look at what he's walked through in the past, they punch a lot harder than Lerone Richards. And he's walked through them, knocked them out. Couldn't do that with Lerone. So would I put Lerone Richards in with Canelo? Of course, yeah. Of course. More importantly, would we be going in there to win? Of course, 100%. Because when you're talking about blueprints and when you're talking about the people that have given him problems in the past, Mayweather apart, and Lerone Richards is the same sort of ilk. Skillful, hard to hit, great distance, got very strong at the weight, big at the weight as well, you know? And he's very, very fast, very, very fast. He's very, very hard to read and pin down. And he's a lot tougher than what you think as well. So anyone that's that kind of sort of style is always going to give Canelo problems. And Bivol, as a more orthodox fighter, just got great feet, great distance, good solid jab. If you look at round one, you look at the jab that he's throwing, how straight and how technically it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it comes, shoots out, comes straight back in, shoots out, comes straight back in. And whether it's touching the glove or whether it's drilling through, they're good shots and they're keeping the distance. They're keeping Canelo exactly where he wants them. And then he started, as the fight's going, he starts pinning downstairs to the body with the right hands. And you know, he's just following on people that have given Canelo problems in the past, which is what you always do. You always look at, but then to try and implement it, what you see other people doing of the past, then you trying to do it is a little bit harder, it's a little bit trickier. And that's where the mentality has to come in as well. You have to be able to hold that together. You have to have, when all the shit's going off around you, and the big build up and the entrance and things like that. And then when you look across the ring and you look at Canelo, trust me, he looks a lot different to when he's at the weigh-in. When you're standing there face to face at the weigh-in, and then you see him on fight night, he gets in. The guy's massive. He's short, and it sounds silly me saying that he's short, but I can. He's short for the weight, but he's so wide, and he's generally built like a tank. So parts of that as well, if you haven't got the right mentality, just that dawning on you, that the occasion, that, you know, the atmosphere, it can dawn on you and it can make you doubt yourself. if you've got any doubt in yourself whatsoever, you've got no chance of beating Canelo. But like Bivol showed, and the other guys that have given him problems or beaten him, they didn't doubt their abilities. They didn't doubt what they were doing, and they managed to hold it together.
A few final notes from me, Dave, before I let you go on to enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Let's stick with your stable. Let's get an update on your stable. We know that Lerone is seeing some of his interviews in the past, a bit frustrated with his position right now in terms of getting those big fights. But run me through the stable and what's next for your fighters.
So yeah, start with Lerone, training every day in there. Just needs a day. All fighters need a day. All fighters need some sort of plan. And at the moment, he's just waiting on Matchroom to let us know what's happening, what's going on. As soon as that's some sort of indication is there, then we can start stepping up the training and going at it properly. So that should be coming in. Now they've got Canelo fight week, because they've had a couple of big weeks in Katie Taylor and Canelo. So now that's out of the way, then hopefully we get a day. But trust me, Lerone will fight any of them. He'll fight your Caleb Plants and your people like that. He's not fussed, you know. There are a lot of fighters out there, but the problem that Matchroom have got as well is that not a lot of fighters want to fight him. You know, John Ryder's on a different trajectory towards WBA, but while he's waiting to get a shot at that, Lerone will fight John Ryder. You know, that's a good fight. You know, he'll fight any of them, and that's when you've got a fight like that. He's only 16 fights in. Don't forget that. But he's willing to do that. And when you got a fight like that, and bear in mind he was slung in against Gongora, because let's see how good he is. Because Gongora is the man that was being bred across in America as a next man to fight Canelo. And he did a job on Gongora. So he's already proven that he'll go in with anybody like that. And that was his 16th fight. So let's see what transpires. Hopefully, you know, something big happens for him. Hopefully some sort of momentum happens for him. And he gets spoken about, because his talent, trust me, he's one talented individual. Jordan Gill is back in the gym now. He's had an operation on his hand. So he will be out, I would imagine, end of August, early September. He'll be ready to fight. Hopey Price, I'm just waiting on a date. He unfortunately had to pull out of the Leeds show because of a back injury, a bit of a freak back injury that happened in sparring. So I'm just waiting on a date for him. Hopefully that'll be July, early July or something. Stephen Cairns will be getting a date off Pro Bellum in the next week or so, I would imagine. And same with Sultan. I'm just waiting to find out what's happening with him. So yeah, it's the first time ever in my gym where nobody's actually got a date. So we were talking about it this week. We were like, hang on, we're all training, not for the first time ever. Not one person's got a date. So it's a little bit strange at the moment.
Boxing is a fast-moving sport that can change in an instant, as I'm sure you know better than I do. Kell Brook, let's move on to Kell, who all of the lights, as it were, dimmed down on his career as he pulls the curtain on it. Right decision here, and how will you remember Kell in your own words, Dave?
100% right decision. The day after the Khan fight, he FaceTimed me, and he was absolutely on cloud nine. And I just said to him, I said, listen, mate, you've got nothing to prove anymore. You will never, ever top that night, because he's already been world champion. But the Khan fight is something he's been chasing for about 17 years. And there's all that bad blood, personality clashes, everything. That fight was personal. And no matter what he wins in the future, he will never, ever top that night. And also what I didn't want was somebody like a Eubank Jr. or a Conor Benn using his name to progress themselves. Because listen, that's part of the business. Don't get me wrong. I understand Conor and Chris Eubank Jr. doing that, because that's part of the business. You know, but because I've known Kell since day one, basically, in the gym, I didn't want that for him, especially coming off that Khan fight. I think that's something that would have ate at him for the rest of his life if it allowed that to happen. But whereas now we can just ride off into the sunset, finish on that high. There's no more demons, no more ifs, whats, or maybes. He can just enjoy himself and hopefully have a great retirement. How I'll remember him, Do you know what? Day one that he was in the gym, Brendan's, me and him sparred, had a little spar, and then to think that, you know, he had a little tiny part, he won a British title with me. That's a nice memory to have. But then to be able to, on the end of his chapter, to be able to commentate on his fight with Khan, that's quite nice, because I feel as though, like, a little bit of the early, a little bit of the middle, and a little bit of the end, I've seen it all the way through, and it's nice to think that he's finished on his terms, how he wants to be, and to go out on, you know, on his biggest moment. So it's nice.
You piqued my curiosity there when you smiled when you talked about a spar with you and Kell Brook. Can you give us a few more details about that?
Oh yeah, it was just Brendan used to have the little kids hitting the pros anyway they want, we couldn't hit him back, and it was his first day it was in, and he was walking on his hands and everything, a little power pack, and his dad Terry had brought him in, and yeah, we had a little move around on the middle circle down at Brendan's gym. But yeah, that was literally day one, and then, like I said, I get to commentate on his final fight, so it was nice.
Dave, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for giving me your time and speaking to Boxing Social. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your Sunday without bothering me. Thank you once again.
Nice one, mate. Thanks a lot. Cheers.